Now, how does one get into professional wrestling, right? The answers are a lot easier now because there's such things as the Performance Center, but back in 2008, that didn't exist. So, how would one go about getting into professional wrestling? Well, I Googled it. I read somewhere that in order for WWE to even give you an audition or even consider you, you need to have about 5 years of wrestling experience. At this point in time, I had zero, but it was just something I felt I would be good at. Like it was almost like it was calling me in a way. So I started looking up professional wrestling schools and there weren't any. So I'm like, well, how does somebody train to become a professional wrestler? Like, where are these places? Because clearly they exist somewhere. And back at this time, getting into the business was very secretive. Like you had to know somebody or be second generation. So they made it really difficult. But somehow I was able to get a lead, and there was a wrestling school in California. It was called UPW. I'm pretty sure that's the same school that John Cena went to. I believe I've heard Samoa Joe pass through there. So the guy who ran it was a gentleman named Rick Bassman. I remember I called and nobody answered, so I left a voicemail. I waited a little while. I remember I called again. I didn't get anything. So I kind of thought that was just going to be a dead end. And then, to my surprise, sometime in June 2008, I remember being in Turks and Caicos, my girlfriend at the time, and I get a phone call from Rick Bassman, UPW. I pick it up, and he tells me that he's a producer on a new reality show centered around Hulk Hogan, and it's going to be teaching celebrities to wrestle. The name was something like Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Wrestling, Hulk Hogan's Championship Wrestling, something like that. Anyway, he asked me if I'd be interested in being in this Hulk Hogan wrestling show, and I'm like, yeah, because this is how I'm going to get into WWE. And he called me back a few days later, and he's like, David, I'm really sorry, that spot got taken. And so just in hearing this, I'm crushed. Like, oh man, another dead end. But then he asked me, hey, have you ever thought about trying out for WWE? I'm like, yeah, man, that's what I want to do. That's why I was going to do the Hogan show. Yes, that's my goal. And he's like, oh, well, you don't need to do this show for that. He's like, I can just get you an audition. I was like, man, this is awesome. Wait, hold up. I don't have any wrestling experience. And he was like, don't worry about it. It's like, I'm pretty sure with your look, your story being a Harvard-educated lawyer, they'll be interested. Bassman told me that somebody from WWE would be reaching out to me. And sure enough, a gentleman by the name of Ty Bailey eventually reached out to me, and we talked briefly, and he said that he would like to fly me to SmackDown, which was taping in Houston, Texas, to meet me in person, and that we would go from there. Let me just tell you, the great thing about lawyers is they always keep receipts. And I happen to have that exact email right here. I'll show it to you, but it has personal information on there. It says, David, great speaking with you. Here's my cell, call or text anytime. Holly Fisher will make the necessary travel arrangements. And Holly was the travel lady. She used to book all of our flights at the time. Super nice. Anyway, it says right here, Holly, we will be flying David in on the 24th to Houston, Texas from Chicago. Please reserve a car in his name. They weren't messing around, but please reserve a car in his name, David Otunga. Yeah, thanks. And this was dated June 12th, 2008. My memory is really good. I'm impressed with myself. So my first interaction with John Laurinaitis was actually pretty brief, but Shad brought me out there and I walked up the ring steps and onto the apron. This is my first ever time stepping into a WWE ring. We said hello. He complimented my physique, asked about my background, and then he asked me why I wanted to do this. And I remember telling him that, honestly, this has been my dream since I was 6 years old. And life took me in another direction. And I ended up going to Harvard Law School and then getting a job at the top firm in Chicago where I was working until I left to pursue professional wrestling. So I was explaining to him how this is my goal. Like, I'm putting everything into this. I pushed all my chips in and this is what I want to do. And he didn't say much. And he just, kind of nodded his head. And he was like, all right, kid, I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you down to Tampa, Florida to our developmental school, FCW, and we're going to see what you can do. He said, it's going to be a week-long tryout just to see how you move around and if you can pick things up. And I said, great, I'll do it. And that was it. That was the interaction. I walked down, and then Carano was there now waiting for me. And, he was telling me, oh man, that seemed like it went really well. Okay, good. So he's like, all right, well, you can stick around and watch the end of the show. So I did. And I went back to catering and sat in there and watched the show. I went out. I remember going out kind of backstage and watching the show like on the side. And that was really cool. Just being able to be at a WWE event, SmackDown taping, but behind the curtain, behind the ropes, like for the first time as a worker. Well, even though I wasn't a worker, but part of WWE as opposed to being a fan. So after that, I flew home, and then they sent me travel.